The Twiggs knew that the hospital had given them the wrong baby, but what happened to their baby? Nobody knew. Where was this baby? Why did this happen? They filed a suit against the hospital for negligence for $100 million.
The couple is asking $100 million in damages.
This was huge news in our region. It was one of the biggest stories we had. When the story first came to light, your response as a reporter is, this can't be true. You hear about a baby swapped in the hospital. It just sounds unbelievable.
I think what they were hoping to do is this publicity could maybe help lead them to their missing child.
What we want most to happen right now is to find our biological daughter.
Before I knew very much about the case, I thought maybe you can prove this isn't your child genetically, but it's going to be hard to find where the real baby is.
In the metropolitan section, or the Metro Florida, I think it's called, I look down and I see couples suing Wauchula Hospital. Well, naturally being from Wauchula, I read it. They said this little girl was born on November the 29th and one on the 3rd, and they were switched at birth. I said, no way, and I shoved the paper across to my husband. I said, Kimberly, this little girl, was born the 29th. He said, how do you know that? I said, too many times that Barbara and Bob and other people told us there were only three children in the hospital.
It turned out the Twiggs hired a private investigator that was able to find there was only one other white child born in that time period at that hospital. In fact, they knew exactly who it was.
One day, an investigator showed up on my doorstep. This is a man working for the Twiggs attorney. He told me that the Twiggs were present in his office, that he was calling to put me at rest, to let me know that they were just wanting to find where their child was and that she was happy and cared for, and that was their main concern. And I said, well, that's fine, but what does that have to do with me? He says, well, we can take a vial of blood to be analyzed by your daughter. I said, you're out of your mind. It's not going to happen. He said, well, we'll get it one way or the other. We will get it, or we'll take you to court for it. And I said, well, you just said the magic words. I said, this conversation is over, and if you hear from me again, it will be from my attorney.
I got a phone call in my office from a fellow that I knew kind of well. He was a salesman named Bob Mays, and when he showed up, he was completely shaken, and he says, I don't know if this is some kind of a prank. I don't know what they're doing this for, but the last thing he imagined was that it was true. He could not imagine that Kimberly Mays was not actually his daughter. So the FBI came to him and said, will you take a lie detector test? And he said, I'll take any kind of a test. This is my baby. And so he took a lie detector test and he passed it with flying colors.
Bob Mays' initial position is that he doesn't care who the biological parents are. He's her father, he raised her, and that's the way it is.
I am her father. I wouldn't care if they trace her heritage to Cabbage Patch, USA. I'm her father, I always have been, and I always will be.
At this point, the Twiggs haven't made any kind of move for custody, but the specter of seeking custody looms over all the proceedings.
Any chance in your mind that this might not be your natural daughter?
I don't believe that at all, Charlie, no.
You don't? Then why not go ahead with the test?
I just don't feel like why? Why should I?
So the Twiggs filed a petition in Sarasota Circuit Court asking that genetic testing be required to determine whether Kimberly Mays was their daughter.
The Twiggs want to have a genetics test not because they want custody, but because they want to get to know Kimberly. They want to have a relationship with her.
The way you would lose this case is incrementally. And so first they come in and they want a blood typing, and then they want DNA. And so as each thing goes, you are slowly allowing this camel to get its nose under your tent. And pretty soon the whole camel's in the tent and you're on the outside. The only way to win that is at the beginning. And so you've got to put up a wall, you've got to protect that wall, you've got to stop that first step.
While at its heart, this case is very emotional and about a child, it is completely surrounded by legal maneuverings for months.
The Florida courts have consistently ruled that biological parents are entitled to custody of their own offspring.
The two lawyers were a total study in contrast. I mean, you had the Twiggs lawyer, John Blakely, who believed in the power of the law, very sober, kind of soft-spoken.
John was a really good choice for them John was very professional, very smooth, very intelligent.
When I saw that John had showed up, this has taken a different turn now. I knew I wasn't going to be able to bark him down or run him off or lecture him about the nuances of Florida law. I decided I needed to get somebody who knew more about family law and custody than I did.
Bob Mays hired an attorney in Sarasota. Art Ginsberg was a divorce lawyer in that town.
I tell you where I'm going, to a men's room. Y'all want to go in here with me?
Art Ginsberg, he was a personality, and his personality was known to everybody in the legal community.
I'm normally very friendly. I'd say hi.
The Mays lawyer argued that even getting Kimberly tested would make her suffer.
The legal team hired several psychologists, as I recall, who voiced the opinion that it would not be in Kimberly's best interest to do the testing.
The one expert that I interviewed said it was really important not to diminish and not to weaken the bond between Kimberly Mays and her father, Bob.
There are 6 very significant experts that say this will destabilize this child. And yet here we still were.
Mr. Mays, I gather that you finally had to sit down with Kimberly and explain this whole thing to her. What did you say? How did she take it?
She only really showed a great deal of concern at one point in the presentation, and that was when when she began to become aware that I was maybe indicating that she might be someone else's little girl and that she may have to leave me.
He was able to present himself as a sympathetic figure because he would just say, "Oh, I love Kimberly. This is the only family she's ever had. Why should anybody snatch her away from this and take her to a family that she knows nothing about?"
So I do remember for the Twiggs, them sort of being villainized in some stories. She was cruel, and how could they be wanting to get this child back even if it was theirs that had been raised by somebody else, and that if they really cared about their biological child, they would let her go in her best interests.
The only priority here is Kimberly, and this thing has just got to come to an end.
Bob Mays wanted Regina to give up, but if you knew how Regina had been raised as a child, you would know that she was the last person who was going to stop.
She's really not going to go away, probably ever.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.